Welcome, friends of the Greasy Shop Rag. Today we're going to take a look at a Stihl MS362 chainsaw. The customer complaint is that the spark plug threads are stripped out. Well, as you can see, there's not a spark plug in here. Yeah, so that's a problem. The customer had brought me this saw. I looked at it. I quoted him a price for putting threads in it. I also warned him that I don't guarantee this job. These thread insert kits, you know, some of them I had better luck with than others, but some things can go wrong. Worst case scenario, you got to replace the cylinder, right? We elected to attempt this repair with this new kit I got at the local parts store and not remove the cylinder. Try and keep costs down. And, you know, it's very doable. Sometimes it don't work out so good. So let's see how this one pans out. This particular kit has a two-step tap in it. I'm going to use this adapter in the decompression valve hole. And I'm going to insert air into here. Pressurize that cylinder so when I use that tap, it hopefully will blow the chips back out instead of letting them fall on top of the piston. So I'm just setting up this piece of fuel line to fit on my air nozzle on the shop air. And now I've got, you know, positive pressure in the cylinder. Hopefully the chips will all blow out past the flutes of the tap. I'm just going to adjust the shop air pressure there a little bit. And we're going to get the piston so it's covering the ports, the transfer ports and the exhaust port. I want it above those. But I want it low enough so that when I put the tap in there, I'm not going to hit the piston. And I've done this kind of thing before. I have a Velcro strap right on the hose here that I use for holding the air nozzle on. I've also kind of adjusted the audio levels here a little bit because the noise from the air was annoying. So you can see this is a two-step tap. I'm just checking to see if I have threads enough in the cylinder that that first step is going to grab those threads. The idea is that if you have enough thread there to pull the tap through while you turn it, it's going to help hold it straight, and it's going to be easier for it to draw in and cut. So I had to remove the air filter to get a little bit better angle on this. Now I'm going to lubricate the tap. That's going to help for cutting and for holding chips. You can see now it threads in real nice. Yeah, those threads are kind of jacked up, but there's just enough there that the tap grabs them. And one thing I did not check was whether or not the tap is oversized on that end. So I'm going to use this snap-on 3/8 ratchet. And the reason I'm using this is you can see I can hold the tap perfectly steady and square. If I was turning this by hand with a ratchet, you know what kind of wobble we would get trying to keep even pressure on that tap. This works pretty good. Now it's a variable speed ratchet and I'm trying to go very slow, and it turns out just bumping the trigger seems to be the best way to do this. There's a ton of chips there right now, and I want to clean those chips. It looks like they stopped blowing through the flutes. So I took a brush and I moved the bulk of them away. And if I just take a pick, you know, what are we doing here? Monkeying around with the air again. If I just take a pick and run it in the fluid so you can clear them a little bit, you can see that that air pressure is blowing those chips out. Now there's a fair chance a couple of chips have fallen in there, but we'll get to that part. Alright, what we're going to do now is we're going to back that tap right out of there, and we're going to clean chips again. I don't want to just keep burying that tap in there to the point of pushing a bunch of chips into the cylinder. And yeah, I can clean all that stuff up, but the more I keep out of there, the better off we're going to be. Right now, I'm happy with the way it looks in there. So we've blown the chips off the tap, re-lubricated it, and then we'll run it back in there. Gotta get my hand out of the way so you can see what's going on. There we go. That thing cuts really nice. I mean, it is a brand new kit. And the pressurized air seems to be blowing the chips out really nice. The only thing you gotta worry about here is that you don't run the tap into the top of the piston. If I had really high air pressure and the tap in there, it might push the piston down and turn the crank, right? And then I would have open ports. So I have done this job in the past where I've taken like a vice grip and clamped it on the flywheel just so the flywheel can't turn and the piston won't move. But if you do that and your tap hits the top of the piston, you could run into problems. So I guess what I'm saying is there's got to be a compromise between the air pressure and where the piston's located and how deep you run the tap in through the cylinder. I guess it's all just stuff you learn from, well, I was going to say from experience in doing it again, but I guess it's stuff you can learn from a YouTube video, right? So we have completed the threading process of this. I'm happy with the way the threads look. A couple of chips got in there though, so I got to recover those. And a hemostat and a Q-tip seem to work pretty good for this, because as soon as you touch that chip with a Q-tip, it sticks to it. And there's a couple in there. You know, with a flex light and later on with the inspection camera, we're going to be able to look in there and be certain that there's no debris left in the cylinder. We don't get a very good look at this in the video. It's hard to tell, but there's a little chip in there yet. What am I looking for? Hemostat and a Q-tip. No debris on it, so let's run it in there and see if we can find that chip. You just saw me rock the flywheel a little bit, and what I did was the chip was right at the top of the piston. So I ran the piston up just a little bit, 1/8 of an inch or something, and then back down, and pushed the chip up alongside the cylinder and left it there when the piston went back down. Then I was able to reach in and just touch it with the Q-tip and grab that chip. I see there's one more, I can see it in the picture here, one more chip on the cylinder wall on the intake side. So I'll have to go in and fish that out of there. I push the cylinder up and then back down, and hopefully it leaves the chip on the side of the cylinder wall. Makes it easier to grab it. Once I'm happy that I've gotten all the chips out, I like to flush the cylinder. You know, if there's some little bit of debris in there that I didn't see, or possibly a chip that's stuck to the top of the cylinder or the combustion chamber, you know, this will flush it out. And using brake clean to do this also will start the process of cleaning those threads that I just cut. So now that it's flushed, I'm doing a final inspection. I'm happy that it's clean in there. And I'm going to take some brake clean and clean these threads. I want them to be oil free. And then I'm just going to dry them up. So that looks good. We should be ready for the insert. This kit came with 3 different length inserts. The smallest one, a 5/16. That's the one we're going to use. There's a 1/2 inch insert in there. And you can see on these things that there's 2 ends to these inserts. On the top side, they're kind of cut and knurled so that you'll see in the end here, we can seat these in here and they'll bite into the side of the cylinder. Now the instructions call for using a high temp silicone sealant. We're going to use Durco HT. It's going to get rid of that first clump of kind of drying silicone there. So I get a lot of use out of Q-tips in the shop, stir sticks, whatever. This time it's going to be a silicone sealant applicator. And I'm just going to coat the threads. This is not quite as bad as watching paint dry, but so we're using a spark plug as a holder, and we're also going to use it for inserting the insert itself. I'm trying to get a nice even coat on here, and I'm not putting the silicone on the threads in the cylinder. And the reason is, if I did that, when I screw this insert in there, it would push that silicone down into the cylinder. By putting it just on the insert itself, any excess is going to be pushed out the top rather than down into the cylinder. So in the past, some of the kits, this is where I've had problems trying to get this thing lined up and started properly. There's so many kits that I've used where you get to this point and the thing just, it doesn't line up right. It won't go in there. I don't know if I've just been buying cheap kits or mismatching the inserts with the taps. I'm not sure. But you can see even here, I'm going in and out a couple times trying to get this thing lined up and squared up decent. Using the old eyeball method, trying to turn it in by hand. I don't want to force it. I don't want to cross thread it. And you know, part of the problem is that hole that we cut in there. I mean, it's not really a really clean machined hole. It's a little bit roughed up, you know. This is the worst part, trying to get this thing lined up. It all balances on what happens here. I also noticed that I got some red Durco on the guy's handle there. So I always start with the minimum amount of force, you know, so I'm turning this in by hand. If I can get it to seat by hand without using power ratchet or, you know, a lot of torque, and it goes in, well, then I'm happy, you know. So now that I'm certain that we're squared up, I can just turn it in there. If I did this all the time, I would customize a spark plug or something without the seat on it and use it as the driver. If I just tried to turn that spark plug out right now, it would take the insert out with it. So that's why I'm using the impact, just to give it a jolt and break it free from the insert. And you can see all the excess silicone is up on top here. We're just going to wipe that away. So what we have now is the insert is in the cylinder, but you know that silicone isn't what's going to hold it in there. That knurled edge on the top is what's going to hold it in there. And the kit comes with, you see there's our knurled edge right there. All those little edges are going to bite into the cylinder once I use this tapered punch to peen it over. Now, you know, this is another one of them things where you can't get too carried away, but you need to be aggressive enough to make it happen. And you can actually feel the edge and see the edge if you're getting it evenly seated. And you'll notice the way I'm hitting this thing is I'm not always hitting it square. That's because I'm trying to catch an edge that's still sticking up. And once I'm happy that, you know, I've got it evenly peened over, you know, that's where we're going to leave it. So let's put our spark plug in there and see if we can crank it down or not. So I'm putting some good torque on there, and we'll see if it takes the insert with it. The insert stayed the way it should, and the spark plug backed out, so I'm happy about that. We're not going to hear it run because we need that silicone to dry for 24 hours. So that's all I'm going to have for you on Stihl MS360 something or other that needed new spark plug threads. Thanks for watching. Later.